the first 2 months, I sort of felt like I was in the weeds every day. Every day was a new thing to learn. Every day was people talking about things I had no idea what they're talking about things like, different environments, moving things up to Azure, things on systems databases, web heads, domain controllers, all these things, which you may or may not understand, but you'll get there. To a point now where I'm actually taking charge of projects, leading projects. One of the things we're doing is one of our companies is called SunPower, and they do solar energy for the United States. We're actually expanding their site to Europe. So I'm one of 2 people in charge of taking the existing web portal, working on localization, and transferring that site to Europe, the European market. It's exciting, it's a lot of fun, it's a big headache sometimes. But what you'll find is, in terms of getting into the job and moving forward, they start off with small projects, things that you can tackle. Maybe it's like bug fixes, simple bug fixes to get you associated with the code, or things that deal to your strengths. Like I'm a designer by trade, so a lot of the initial front-end stuff came my way to get me more familiar with their architecture and how the front end dealt with the database layer that then dealt with the business logic layer, and then getting a feel for how all of these components work around each other. So it's been quite a ride. One of the things that I think that you can take from this is understanding all of the basic things you're learning, and know that at some point you're going to have to figure out how they all weave together. I mean, you've all taken SQL stuff, you've all taken, Visual Studio, you've learned C#, but you've sort of all done it in a bubble. Now the challenge when you get into a job is, how do I take C# and SQL and make the two communicate? How do I take, all the things I learned in HTML and ASP, and now with code behind in C# and make the 3 of them work together? And I think that's where the big difference happens between being here and actually in the job, is finding how to take everything you've learned and make the pieces of the puzzle fit together. And that just comes with time. Just definitely comes with time. Even now I'm still learning a lot of the things that's happening. But there's a lot more confidence in what I can do. There's a lot more self-confidence in myself, not only from my bosses, but from myself in taking over positions and taking over jobs and saying, yeah, I can do that. I think I know how to do that. Let me ask you a question, point me in the right direction, and I'll take off with it. If I have problems, then I'll come back to you. But it's really definitely an issue of understanding your strengths, understanding what you know, trusting what you know, and not being afraid to ask questions and things like that. So Kendra asked me to talk about the program itself and kind of what are the things that I found very valuable. So I kind of created a list of things that I thought were really cool. The first one was, for myself, having a really good knowledge of HTML and CSS. Because no matter what you're doing, whether it's working with C# or Angular or Backbone or an MVC framework, the user is always going to see something in the browser, and that requires understanding of HTML and CSS. So if you can build pages, just random pages, understand how to manipulate layouts and things like that, you'll be golden. Like seriously, I'm the only one in my job who knows how to do this stuff, so everyone comes to me, even my senior developer comes to me looking for advice on how to lay out pages and things like that. So being able to do that is the basis for software development. Understanding object-oriented programming is really important. Inheritance, polymorphism, every single day we deal with it, especially in C#, because you're working with classes and inheritance of classes. So if you can understand those concepts, you'll be fine. You don't need to know the nitty-gritty about it, but being able to understand how to take properties and methods and transfer them easily from one class to another, very, very important. ASP.NET, I work with it every day. I even work with classic ASP. Don't ever do that, it's horrible. But ASP.NET, I work with it every day. You have to understand namespaces, classes, and understand how to work with methods, method overloading. You guys do that a little bit, but really understand, we have methods that have like 15 versions of it because we're looking at different parameters for each time. So being able to understand how to read through that stuff and code through that stuff is really important. SQL. You have to know how to do SQL. You can't work in a development job without understanding how to query a database. It just goes without saying. You don't have to be masters of the architecture, but a lot of our problems are solved by data errors. Either someone, enters a SQL query incorrectly, someone forgets to fill out a data input layer in a form, and it just crashes our system. So being able to navigate through a database, understand tables, understanding joins, very, very important. I do it every single day. I do it every hour of my day looking at databases. So that's also very important for me. And finally, just some general software things I think are really good. Visual Studio, understanding IIS, understanding PowerShell, how to use it, understanding SQL Server management systems, any type of database management system. These are all things that you need to understand. Like, even if you don't understand the nuances of it, knowing what those are, knowing how to navigate through them, very, very important. Probably the one thing I think that, and this is what I was tested on in my technical interview, logic. If conditionals, else conditionals. That's probably the biggest thing you can learn in software. Software development is all about logic. The difference is you speak in different languages. The syntax is different. But it doesn't matter if it's C#, if it's Ruby, if it's Python, whatever. The logic stays the same. You know, if something, then this. Or, you know, trying to figure out if I want this to work, what are the repercussions of it happening? It doesn't really matter what language it's in because the result will be the same. So if you can really nail down if else conditionals and all that stuff, it's pretty much the backbone of software development. And then also just being able to understand how different layers work with each other. Again, you have business logic, you have data access, you've got information layers, you've got the front UI stuff. These are all pieces and components of an application that can be extremely broad and deep. So just understanding how these layers work with each other, as well as being able to understand how they navigate or how they connect with each other. Sometimes a lot of these layers can be very convoluted. So keeping those clean from each other, but understanding how they work together, very, very important. Do you guys know what I mean by like data access, business logic? Yeah? Perfect, cool. And then finally, just a couple of things I learned on the job. These are sort of like pearls of wisdom. The first thing is you aren't expected to know everything. In fact, they expect you to know absolutely nothing. So don't fall into the trap of the imposter syndrome. Are you guys familiar with the imposter syndrome?
Yeah.
The imposter syndrome is basically when you think to yourself, look at all these people around me who know much more than I am. I'm an imposter because I don't know what I'm talking about. Their software development is so at a level much higher than mine that I'm just faking it the whole time. So don't fall into that trap of thinking that you're not good enough, because you'll always find people that know more than you, and you'll always find people that you will know more than them. So we all suffer through that imposter syndrome. Don't fall into that trap. If you're in a good company, they will have a map or a timeline or understand of how long it takes to onboard someone based upon their code structure, based upon what they haven't implemented to help you along. So they should know exactly, all right, 3 months in you should be here, 5 months in you should be here, a year in you should be here. If you don't have that, then you need to talk to your managers about that and say, hey, you know what, I'm here, it's been 3 months, how am I doing? Where should I be? Am I lacking somewhere? Am I exceeding your expectations? That open communication is really good, and it also helps you become a lot more confident with what you're doing. You know, if you sort of develop in a bubble without anyone ever telling you how you're doing, you'll always feel like you aren't good enough. But that open communication with your managers, with your senior developer, code reviews, is invaluable for you. The second thing I would say is, given that you aren't supposed to know everything, you need to take the initiative and ask questions. Don't ever think you're stupid. Like, don't be afraid of looking stupid if you don't ask questions. Be afraid of looking stupid if you don't ask enough questions. The last thing you want to do is to assume something and find out 4 weeks into a release that you were completely wrong and you've wasted 4 weeks when you could have talked to someone and fixed the problem in a day. So ask questions. Don't be afraid to be that one person in a stand-up meeting all the time saying, explain this to me, explain that to me. It'll help you get better, and chances are I'll probably be there sitting going, I don't know what she's talking about either, so it's great to ask the question too. So ask questions, and don't wait for meetings. Like, a lot of my office is very collaborative. We'll just pull each other aside real quick and say, hey, help me out here. You're the systems manager. You're the security guru. I've got a question about DNS. stuff like that. So ask questions all the time. Celebrate your victories. I'm sure you guys have been here and you finally, like, you finished typing something or coding something and you go, yes, it's taken me 3 days and I finally got it figured out. Celebrate your victories. We do it all the time. I mean, you know, go take a break, get a cookie, leave early if you can. I've done that. Bring it up in stand-up. I mean, stand-up's a great time to really celebrate your victories. Talk about what I did yesterday. Here's the problem, and we figured it out, and we finally we're able to launch on this thing, you know? Celebrate your victories. That's the kind of stuff that really, when you're like in sprint number 4 of a release and your brain's tired and you just have had enough, when you are able to solve something and just say, yeah, I did it, we figured it out, it's a real boost to keep going. So celebrate your victories. That's very, very important. Document everything you do. Like everything. Be meticulous about documenting all the processes you've done, what you've learned for the day. If you have an issue that comes up, how did I fix it? Even if it's not related to the software, say you've got a bug and like, I can't get my computer to do something, how did I fix it? Because chances are, you'll find that same issue come up again. You'll have, at some point, you'll be the person onboarding someone into the job, and they may come up with the same issue in getting things organized. You look pretty sharp by saying, oh, I know exactly how to fix this, and go with it. So document everything you have. We take advantage of having Evernote, and we fill that sucker up every day with documentation on bug fixes, on deployments, on style guides, and things like that. Really take advantage of it. It's a wealth of knowledge, and the best thing about it is it lasts, and it can be a working document that over the course of time you end up creating an extensive library that you can then impart to someone else. And then finally, enjoy the journey you're on. It's pretty awesome to be a developer this day and age. We're like the doctors and lawyers of this century. No one wants to be doctors and lawyers. Everyone wants to work in computers. So the fact that you're taking this step and doing this stuff is a step in the right direction. And we'll just cut to the crowd. I was making decent money in San Francisco. I'm making more money here in Portland now than I did in California. And having a lot more fun, and in a position where I don't have stress. I don't have people breathing on my neck. It's a very collaborative environment. One of the great things about my company is we set up our own schedule. We sit down on a release and decide, we're going to work on this project, and this project. I'm going to do this project, and this project, and this project. And that's my workflow. We'll get issues that come in, but there's never that feeling of, oh, something is coming my way that I don't know about. Everything that I work on is because I've chosen to work on it, and I've set my own deadlines for that. There's a big feeling of relief and I don't know, sort of freedom in knowing that I control my own workflow, I control what I do. The bosses are there to prevent politics and other sort of bureaucracy from affecting my work, and I can just sit down and code and work at my own pace. And that's a really liberating feeling, particularly if you've worked in other places where you've had, you know, managers that are just breathing down your neck on deadlines. You've had, I don't know, I've worked in retail before. It's really crappy. Sorry if anyone works in retail, but you know, you've got to fold all this clothing or get all this, you know, all these clothes back on the sales floor, you know, before we open tomorrow. Or you've got, like, you know, a big lunch crowd running in, and you're running behind on orders. That stuff doesn't happen anymore. And the sooner you get your foot in the door, the sooner you're going to be on a path where you can actually be very successful, very independent, and just have a lot of fun. So that's all I've got in terms of talking. I really wanted to be here to answer questions for you guys and kind of be a font of my own experience. So feel free to ask me anything you want in terms of interviewing, fears, you know, day-to-day stuff. I'm an open book. I'm here for you guys. So
tell us what your interview was like.
My interview, okay.
For this particular job.
Let me go back. So I'm gonna sit down. So I actually interviewed quite a bit in San Francisco, and the layout of San Francisco is much different. I interviewed for a company for a hybrid developer designer position, and I got 4 rounds in to the interview process, but this is 4 rounds of phone interviews. I didn't even get the on-site interview before they told me I wasn't a candidate. I've had interviews where they've asked me to code in languages I have no idea what I'm talking about. They've said, here's what we work in, here's the problem, code it. I'm like, I don't know this language. I know JavaScript, I'll code in that, is that cool? I've had questions where people ask me to do something, and I've done it 3 different ways, and they say, well, come up with another way. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I did it 3 times already. And they're looking for a specific way to do something. Avoid those jobs. Any job that tells you there is only one way to do it, and that's my way, you don't want to work there. You don't want to work there.
Good advice.
Okay? For my current job, it was actually really fun. The first interview was just introductory review, where they do a phone interview to make sure you're not a weirdo. That's always the case, that you can speak coherently, that you can speak to the topics at hand, and that they're not afraid to invite you on site. My first interview on site was basically just meeting the team and talking about my experience. Wanted to see if I had the chops to be associated with the company. Did I know what I'm talking about? Did I come across exactly what my resume said? My second interview was the technical interview, and that was actually really fun. We did absolutely no coding. There was no like theory. It was all logic problems. He basically said, I've got a problem for you, solve it for me. Do you guys want to do it? Yeah. You want to do it? All right.
Sure.
So I have 3 buckets here. In one bucket, it's labeled blue. In one bucket, it's labeled red. In one bucket, it's labeled red and blue. These are filled with colored balls. So one bucket has only blue balls. One bucket only has red balls. One bucket has a mixture of red and blue. There's no repeats. The only thing I can tell you is that all the labels are wrong. How many pulls does it take? What's the least number of pulls of balls to determine how to get these labels correct? So how would you go about solving this problem? Just off the top of your head.
Test for
You can
the second ball to be the same color as the first ball.
Right, but we're looking at how many. So what you can do is you can start pulling balls infinitely. But I want to know what's the smallest number of pulls you need to do in order to figure out how to get these labels correct. So let's walk through it. What if I pull from here and it's a red? What do I know right away?
Could be either red or red and blue.
Right, so this could be 100 red balls and 1 blue ball. And I could pull 100 times and not get the blue ball to the last one. So that's not the best way to think about it. That'd be 100 pulls, right?
Yeah.
Same thing applies for red and blue, or the red bucket. However, if I pull once from here and it's blue, what do I know right away?
It's blue.
I know that this is now a blue one. I know this can't be blue anymore, right? So that becomes red, and then this becomes red and blue. So it's 1 pull. That was my interview question.
Wow.
It's actually pretty fun, if you think about it. And the best part is, I didn't get it right the first time. I basically said, let's pull from this one and see what happens. He's like, yeah, but you don't know how many balls there are. This could be, 10 foot or 10 or a 5 foot tall barrel that's like that round. You don't know how many balls are in there. Same thing with this one. You come here, you pull once, and you know right away what's happening. So that's the kind of questions they asked me. They asked me an algebra question too. I can't repeat it, unfortunately, because I don't know the algebra question. But it was one of those things where they said, here's an algebra problem. Everything, the top line is true. That's the only thing I tell you. But the bottom line of the algebra problem was wrong. And if you go through it, you realize that it actually looks pretty good. The whole purpose of this was to kind of determine how do you solve problems, not to get the problem right. It's like, do I start from the top and work my way down? Do I start from the bottom and work my way up? What's my logic? What's my thinking and how I solve a problem? Do I start at the end? Like say there's a bug, do I start at the end of the bug and work my way back? Do I start at the beginning of the user experience and work my way forward? Both are right ways to do it. You both end up at the same spot, and eventually you find where the problem is. It's just, where do you start your problem? No right answer, just an exercise in how you solve problems. So my job was really great in that they were looking for people that could think, as opposed to, here's a theory, here's an algorithm. How do you bubble sort this crap? Who cares? You're never going to bubble sort when you're developing. I don't bubble sort. These are the types of questions, and this is the thing that's really interesting about the software industry is it's moved from a industry of college graduates who understand computer science theory and have never coded in a day in their life to people who can code the crap out of stuff and maybe don't know computer science or algorithms, but you tell them to do something, they can come up with 5 different ways on how they would implement something, as opposed to going with like a theory of how something's done. They know. They've done it once before, they've done it twice before. And because they're so adaptable, they'll be able to learn a 3rd way to do it, or a 4th way, or a 5th way to do it. In my company in California, you know, we had pedigrees, people from MIT and Harvard and Berkeley and stuff, but at the same time, we were looking for people that could actually do things. Like if I gave you a challenge and said, hey, make this for me, they could actually make it for you. They could come up with a viable way to make it work, rather than theorizing how it's going to work. They'd say, all right, give me a day, I'll get it for you. And you have your prototype done. So that's the trend in software. It's not about where you went to school, it's about what you know. So, yeah.
What job hunting strategies were most effective for you as far as, you know, things that didn't pan out very much?
I actually lucked out because, have you guys met Anandra?
Yeah.
Anandra got me this lead, and she just said, I think this is the perfect position for you. So this was actually my 2nd interview that I did.
Who's Anandra?
She was a student here who was in charge of career placement for a while, but now she's part of the consulting team, I think.
Project manager.
Or project manager, yeah. So I'm not sure what happened, but she was, for a while, was working as a career placement director, and she found this position on Craigslist and said, hey, it looks like it's perfect for you. So I didn't have a lot of trouble finding a job here in Portland. Hopefully it all applies to you as well. But I've used Indeed. I've used Craigslist. I've used, there's actually a website called juniordeveloper.com or something like that. I don't know. It's basically a crawl-in site. It just pulls junior developer positions from all the different postings. So from Indeed, from Craigslist, and exclusively targets junior developer positions. So I would also recommend just a lot of networking. Tech and Pong is a good one if you guys play ping pong. They do once a month at Altsource, I believe, which is local. It's like up here somewhere. Any other questions you guys have? Yeah.
I know probably a few years ago, I've been in the tech industry for a while myself. One of the things that you get is kind of a feeling of, you know, it's the computer science majors are the ones that actually, they've learned the algorithms and all that stuff, and it tends to be kind of a separate, you know, they're the actual software engineers versus the people who've learned how to code get kind of classed as the code monkeys. Do you still have you found that that's the case with the position you got? Like, was there a barrier that you had to break?
No. It's actually funny because one of the developers came up to me and he's like, "You are amazing because I don't know many designers who can run a SQL query." I think the trend now it's shifting. You know, you were talking. I mean, the thing about software is things move rather rapidly. So even like 2-3 years ago, it was all about pedigree. You know, go to Harvard or MIT or Berkeley or something and get this degree. But in my particular job, it's everyone has a special role to fill in the company. We've got a guy who's a security guru. It doesn't matter where he went to school. He's a security guy. You ask him questions about security, about authorization, about architecture, he can answer it to you. You've got me, who's the front-end guy, you know, and all of my front-end stuff, I took like a couple of community college courses to start, but all the stuff I learned has been on the job, and it's been through my own independent study. I'm the front-end guy for my company. We've got one guy who is so sharp in C#. I mean, you can ask him anything possibly about C#, and he knows the answer. So in my particular company, it's not about where you came from, it's what can you contribute to the team that's missing. My company is a small one. I mean, we're headquartered in California, and our dev team up here is only 6 people. But everyone has a role that they fill. And you know, that's one thing I recommend is you guys, if there's something that you really are jazzed about, really focus your time and energy on that. You know, it's one thing to be broad. You know, like my resume says I have no Angular and Ruby and stuff, and I dabbled in it. It's all buzzwords, but my bread and butter is front-end development. and C# coding. You know, that's what I do now, and ASP.NET now because of my job. That's my bread and butter, you know. So if I were to find another job, that's what I would target. In my former company, with all the pedigrees, it just got them in the door. It just got them in the door. There was never this sense of classism that I felt. I was a little bit on the outside because I was, you know, the design guy. So there is a big distinction between designers and developers. That exists, no doubt. But within the engineering and developer team, there was really nothing that I could see. And it could, you know, I don't know. It could be something attributed to corporate culture. It's kind of hard in a small company to really have that level of elitism because we all are working towards the same goal. We aren't broken up into, you know, different products to work on. It's like, no, we all have to work on this one particular release cycle with this one particular product. So we can't be, you know, pulling we can't be doing anything where it's like, I'm too good for this. You know, I can't go in and search for this line of code and fix it because I went to Stanford or whatever. You know, it's like, this needs to be done, we're gonna do it. This is my strength, I'll do this is your strength, you do that. We'll meet somewhere in the middle and hopefully it works. I don't know, I don't have a lot of experience in a lot of bigger companies, so I can't really speak to that. But everything I've experienced so far has not been like that at all. Anyone have any questions? Yeah.
I mean, do you concern yourself at all about maybe becoming too specialized?
Yes and no. I've always been a front-end guy. That's why I love it. For me, it's just a matter of keeping up with the trends and hopefully imparting a lot of what I think are on the bleeding edge of technology into my company. Like right now, we're looking at a new UI framework for our platform, so I really am trying to push for Angular or React. But you know, again, it's one of those things where it only works if it works. If it doesn't work for what we planned, then we won't do it. But I think if you're really jazzed about something, you should go ahead and pursue it. It makes you, one, it does limit what your possibilities, but it also makes you one of the most viable candidates for that particular technology or specialization. You know, yeah. So if you're a Ruby guy, be the mother effing Ruby guy. You know, learn all you can about it so that if you go for a Ruby position, you just smoke the other candidates. The one thing I've always felt is being too broad was a detriment to me, because I would apply for anything and everything that I felt fell into my purview. No matter what my skill level was, I would just apply and hope that I could BS my way through it and get the job. And I realize now that's probably not the best thing for me. And that's just sort of my own perspective about it. Yeah?
How do you avoid the hit by a bus rule?
What do you mean by hit by a bus rule?
If you're the best person at your job and nobody else could actually do your job, you know, what if you get hit by a bus?
We actually have that. So a lot of our code is legacy code. So a little bit about my company is, prior to last year, they were all contractors. And so they had the whole contractor mentality of like, what's the cheapest and quickest way to do this? Without really thinking about how is this scalable? Can we possibly, you know, expand on this a few years down the road? So we're in this sort of dilemma where, you know, one of our developers is getting on in years, and he may not be around for a while. I mean, retirement, not like dead or anything like that. But he may decide to retire within a few years, and he's the only guy who knows this one particular application. So it's just training. We basically decide, all right, so you will now take over, and he'll document everything you can. Any issues that come up with this particular application, you're on the team to figure it out. Whether you can do it yourself or not remains to be seen, but you will be a part of every issue, every bug, every feature associated with this particular application in some respect. So it's really documentation, all about documentation, and thorough documentation. It's all about exposure to the existing technology or specialization. And I don't know, making sure your employees are happy and don't want to leave. You know, it's something we've talked about. I can't say that we're there yet, but it is something that we're working towards. The other thing is also to find people who can specialize in multiple things. So we've got, you know, one guy who's super strong in security. We've got another guy who's sort of now being mentored by him. You know, I'm the front end guy. My partner who's on the maintenance team, I'm now working with him to get him up to speed with how to do some of the things I do, so that I'm not the only one that has to do it. It's all about job sharing, basically. Particularly in a small company, everyone needs to be able to do everything at some point. Big companies can afford to, you know, someone leaves, they got like 30 people waiting to jump in anyway, so. But, you know, in a situation where it's a small company, it's all about job share and job knowledge share. Yeah.
Like, what are your expectations for your hours, and does it change dramatically from one month to the next month? You know, how many hours a week?
So everyone in my company is expected to be in the office from 10 to 2. Everyone's expected to put in a full 8-hour day, whether you want to come in at 6 and leave at 3, come in at 10 and leave at 6. Doesn't matter, as long as everyone's in the office from 10 to 2. It affords a lot of flexibility. So if I have a doctor's appointment, I can just take off after 2 o'clock, like today. We can work from home if we want to. We just have to, you know, let everyone know. But there's no real strict rules in terms of work. It's all results driven.
Does it change a lot? Like, when you get close to the deadline, do you find that some weeks are really light and some weeks are really, really heavy, or is it pretty stable? It's
pretty stable for me, mostly because we work in 8-week releases, so 2 or 4 2-week sprints. The very first couple of days of the first sprint is spent planning out the entire release. So we spend, which was this past week, we spent 2.5 days in meetings discussing our customer backlog, our internal backlog, and our customer-facing issues, and scoring everything and saying, all right, this is the priority for this release. This is the priority regarding customer-facing. Our salespeople do the customer-facing stuff. And we sit down and map out what we're going to do for the next 8 weeks and assign who does what during which sprint. Our project manager is really good in terms of making sure that we're busy but not completely overwhelmed. Obviously, you know, there are things that come up. Doesn't affect me as much since I don't really deal with a lot of the security stuff and the error handling. But it all depends on your role. But no one I've known has ever felt completely overwhelmed, and I think they do a lot to mitigate that. They're also, the challenge for my company is, you know, they've gone from contractor thinking to now dev cycle thinking. So the challenge is to get our salespeople to be on board with that, as opposed to before, we're like, oh my God, here's an issue, send it to the dev team to fix. It's like, well, no, we're now in the 3rd week, or the 3rd sprint of our release. This is gonna have to wait till next release, you know? So it gets our sales team down in California in the thought of, all right, the release planning's coming up in 8 weeks from now, let's get our crap together so that when they plan, we have all of our ducks lined in a row, and then we can get our important stuff on the next release. You know, obviously there's some give and take, but having that Agile and Scrum environment helps a lot with what we do. Partially because we're responsible for picking what we're doing, and we all understand what we're capable of doing, and we also. A lot of people in the company have had experience working with certain issues, so we can actually quantify a lot of our work pretty easily. So we can easily say, well, this project's probably going to take 3 days. You know, okay, Rand, you're kind of new to it, so we'll give you 5 days to get it done. And usually that works itself out. But it's not like there's no pressure cooker at all. I mean, I usually leave around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's kind of nice. Yeah.
What's your ratio of coding versus QA of your code?
That's hard because we're doing a lot of legacy code.
Do you have a QA department, or
we have a QA person. And again, because it's all legacy code that's built by contractors, one of our major projects over the course of the next couple months is to actually set up a documentation of standard features for our portal, what the add-ons and add-on features are, and then how to test that. With the end result being that we take this manual testing document and eventually run scripts, so it's all automated testing. Our company is expanding. We'll probably be looking for a QA person, like an actual QA person, pretty soon. We're actually looking right now for a developer, so send your resume in.
What's your company name?
It's called On Fulfillment.
On Fulfillment?
We're looking for a junior to mid-level developer. But in terms of, for me, if it's, I'd say right now it's about 50-50. 50-50 new feature development, and then the other 50% is bug fixes and issues that come up. And
You write your own unit tests then?
we do, yeah, we do. It's all right. It's not my favorite thing to do, but you know, I have to do it. Y'all find what you end up liking, and hopefully you end up with people that like things different than you, so you can just switch work sometimes. Anyone have any questions? Yeah.
Do you ever think about going back to San Francisco for web development?
Hell no. Here's my take on San Francisco. Okay. It is the mecca of web development and software development. You have people from all over the world trying to get into San Francisco. So when you have a job posting, you have literally 300 to 400 applicants for one position in San Francisco. You know, not to think, you know, let me speak from personal experience. I never felt that I was the top candidate for a lot of positions I applied for. You know, when you're 1 out of 400, 150 people, the thing about the Bay Area is they are always looking, because they have a wide pool of people to select from, they're very particular in who they want to hire. So you need to have the look, you need to have the right cultural fit, you need to have the right interests, you need to know the right people in order to even stand a chance of getting an interview with some of the companies down there. I mean, Apple and Google, for my job, which is a designer, they required a master's in human-computer interaction to make logos and icons. It's like, seriously? I'm going to sit on a computer in Photoshop and basically create arrows and buttons and stuff, and you need a master's degree for that. That's ridiculous.
Wow.
But that's the kind of stuff that they you know, that's one of the barriers down there. So I actually kind of got a little sick about it and decided to come up here, where, you know, it's now the Silicon Forest. From my experience, the talent pool here is not as big, but it's also not as diverse in skill levels. I think everyone here is fairly, the deviation in skills up here is a lot smaller than in the Bay Area. You've got people who have taken a coding course and think that they now are developers down in California, to people who have been developing at Oracle for like 20 years. So you've got a wide breadth of people all competing for the same job. You know, I did the numbers and I didn't like the results of that. It reached a point where I was creating a spreadsheet of all the jobs I had applied for, all the interviews I had gotten, working out the difference between that and how many got on site, and that the rule is it's supposed to be 10% is like a good ratio of jobs you've applied for and on-site interviews. I was peaking at like 2%, so I said, screw this, I'm out of here. Not to like burst your bubble, but that's my own take on it. I've also lived in it for 11 years, so it's too expensive, I wouldn't go back. Not even on a software developer salary. But there's a lot of places that are developing. I actually applied for a job in Amsterdam. I got to the 3rd round before they said no. But Amsterdam's a great place, particularly because their language of commerce is English.
Coffee with Guido.
So they look, and there's not a lot of skill set people there who can actually do the jobs that we do over there. So they always look for international people who work there. So if you want to work in Europe, go to Amsterdam. The company I worked for, or I applied for, was called Booking.com. They would actually pay for your visa, fly you out there, give you an apartment for the first 3 months and all that stuff. So give it a try.
So was it the Tech Academy? Did that make you choose? Is that why you chose Portland?
I have family here, so I thought about just coming up here. I felt if I figured flat on my face, I'd have a place to crash. But for the price, for the reputation, and for the career placement numbers, I thought it was probably the best choice for me. Also because I thought the focus was something I didn't know already, so the other courses I could kind of breeze through, and I could focus my time on like Python and C# and ASP. So I figured it would be a better investment. Plus, just knowing that Eric had so many connections here in Portland, I was actually using Tech Academy for job placement mostly, but and it worked. But I did learn quite a bit in terms of, it strengthened what I already knew in terms of basic software development. It strengthened what I knew about, you know, SQL and HTML, CSS, and then expose me to, you know, the C# and .NET framework stuff, and which is important because that's all we talk about every day. I mean, we speak CNET or .NET in my shop, so it's been pretty invaluable. I don't think I would have had as much luck getting out to the workforce as quickly because I had applied to positions here prior to joining the Tech Academy, and you know, got a couple of bites, but nothing really landed. I don't know. Who's from Portland or Oregon here? Is it true that it takes longer to get a job here? Like, I've heard it takes a little bit. Like, people are just a little so laid back that it takes a while to kind of get responses. I don't know if that's true.
It depends on the position. If it's with a financial institution or a healthcare, which is big in this area, then the process moves slow.
Okay.
And if it's federal, it moves even slower.
Well, I'm sure that's across the board. But yeah.
Especially if you're not headquartered here.
Right.
Like, some of the financial decisions have to come from elsewhere.
Yeah. Anyone have any other questions? Nope. Well, thanks for having me over. Look me up on LinkedIn if you want. I'm happy to if you guys want to talk one-on-one or meet up for coffee or something. I do just work right across the street, literally. So I'm happy to sit down and chat. Let you, ask, if you want to ask me questions that you're too embarrassed to ask now, or have questions come up later, feel free to hit me up. I'm happy to do it for you. I don't know. I was in your position all last year, so I understand how daunting it seems, sort of how unsure, especially because this is my third career change now, so I'm sure a lot of you are kind of in that same boat. Stability is important to me, and this is sort of, oh my god, changing careers in my 30s, late 30s. Not great, but it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. It's rewarding, and I think you guys will succeed. Everyone I've talked to who's come out of here has done pretty well, so you guys should be well on your way to do that. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I'm definitely gonna send a resume.
Yeah, for sure.
On fulfillment.
Onfulfillments.com.
All right.
Um,
And you got the job posting.